All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you once again for joining us for this third webinar in our live webinar series today on Lawson 10x, Technical Differences. This is a presentation that's focused around answering questions you have, so we certainly hope that you will ask away, and we will try to ask them along the presentation. We may save some for the end. Our presenter today is Richard Stout, who does a great job delivering this. Very excited to have him here today. A couple other housekeeping notes. One is you should be able to toggle the live video feed with the PowerPoint and make it whatever suits you on the screen. And secondly, we will be recording this webinar and putting it on YouTube. Takes us a few days. We'll send that out so you can rewatch it or share it. And with that, I give you Mr. Richard Stout.
All right. Woo, thanks, Keith. Yeah, I continue to be Richard Stout. Thanks for attending today. This one is going to be a little bit less slide focused, a little bit more interactive, right? So let's make this a Q&A session. I'm going to start by talking a little bit about RPI and what we're involved in with Lawson 10. I have about 20 slides to go through, but mostly I want to hear from you guys, and I want to try and answer any questions you might have. So please make use of the questions box in GoToMeeting, and my producers will interrupt me along the way to answer some questions. Very proud to be part of this team here at RPI Consultants, 40+ strong at this point. We have a really strong technical practice with Lawson, and we've really been focusing on upgrades lately. So I have a lot to share with upgrading to version 10. Let's take a look at why I feel like we're qualified to present on Lawson 10 at this point is because we have Lawson 10 related projects at all of these clients going right now, and we'll be keeping very busy throughout the rest of this year. All right, with that, let's dive right into it. So what's in and what's out? I think at this point, we all know that LAUA security is gone in version 10, right? So that's a prerequisite, is you need to be on Lawson security at the moment that you go live on 10. LID is out for end users, right? Now that's been a message that's been being said for years, and now it's finally true. And process flow migrates over to IPA. So it's the next generation workflow tool from Infor. What's in with version 10 is when you're looking at upgrading to Lawson version 10, pay attention to software licensing. Yeah, you're current on maintenance, you're entitled to the product, but it's not automatic. So everyone here who's watching this, who's planning their upgrade to Lawson version 10, if you haven't done so already, I would encourage you to reach out to your Lawson your Infor account executive to make sure that you got your licensing lined up for all the products that become part of your 10 universe. What else? Design Studio, that's a pretty common question that we get. Is Design Studio still work under Mingle? Yeah, it is. Design Studio is totally valid and it continues to be a great solution in the Lawson 10 world and generally works within Mingle. Your existing screens will convert over. There's one element that they changed how that works. It's a drop down. So if you have any drop downs in Design Studio, you have any JavaScript that interacts with those drop downs, you'll find that the way that you need to programmatically access those elements is slightly different. So that's definitely something you want to pay attention to in testing. What else is in with 10? Infor security services becomes a big part of the Lawson 10 environment. I have a couple of slides on that a little bit later on in the presentation, so we'll dive into that. Let's talk a little bit about platforms. I think for us, we've definitely seen the most interest lately on the Windows platform. A lot of organizations are looking to potentially move to Windows if they're not on Windows, or definitely maintain their Windows environment. And a big consideration there is moving up to the newer operating system version. right? A lot of people got caught recently with the end of Server 2003 maintenance from Microsoft, not looking to get caught behind on that again. The 2 Windows versions available, actually 3, because you got 2008 R2, you've got 2012 R2 support just came out with LSF 10.07, which is about 2 weeks old now at this point. So Windows 2008 R2 has been the platform of choice on the Windows side for a while now for Lawson. It's got probably about 5 years left of mainstream support from Microsoft. Continues to be a solid platform. But a lot of organizations are interested in moving into 2012 R2. So let's talk a little bit about what's different there. One big difference is the COBOL compiler. So instead of the COBOL compiler that everyone's been using all along, the Micro Focus, the NetExpress solution on Windows, Micro Focus has changed the COBOL compiler support. And when you move up to 2012, they actually have a different product that handles that. It's called Visual COBOL. If you're looking to move to Windows Server 2012 R2, you will need to get a license for Micro Focus Visual COBOL. Again, talk to your Infor account exec for that. It's a chargeable license because it's Micro Focus considers it a different product. What are the other differences there in the operating system? Microsoft is phasing out SUA. That's the subsystem for Unix applications. So there's a little bit different. The Unix compatibility layer in Windows looks a little bit different with Server 2012. We use Cygwin to provide that Unix compatibility instead of SUA. So that's what gives you your your shell operating environment for Lawson applications. Take a look at what Windows updates are available. Make sure your machine's up to date. On the 2008 R2 side, there are a handful of Windows updates that we highly recommend for Lawson that are not standard. They're fixes that you need to go specifically download and install. If anybody wants to list them, send me an email after, and I'll get that to you. I don't have the same. We don't have the same requirement on the 2012 side. They brought those fixes into the operating system functionality, but do keep your system patched. Talk just to spend a little bit of time on some of the other platforms out there. Lawson continues to support Solaris, HPUX, AIX, and IBM I. We also add Red Hat Enterprise Linux support with the more recent versions of Lawson. A lot of organizations maybe on proprietary hardware and software like the Power Series, AIX operating system, looking to save a bit on support costs. Maybe looking to take advantage of virtualization, so they want to move into a virtualized environment. With VMware, that means either Windows or Red Hat Linux. So we've seen a lot of interest in moving to the Linux platform as well. This next slide, I just wanted to show a screenshot of Mingle. Here we are on the PO20 screen. Just in case you haven't seen what the user interface, the web user interface looks like in Lawson 10. This is our PO20 portal screen delivered through the Mingle wrapper. I'll just point out a couple of things. On the top of the screen, you see where it says Lawson. You've got your home icon, a globe icon up there. That top bar is delivered by Mingle. That's the main navigation bar within Mingle. Each of those icons up at the top represents a Mingle plugin. So each Lawson or Lawson-related web application can be configured in Mingle and accessed through there. So you might have an icon up at the top for LBI dashboards or the MSCM web admin interface. You can bring in Mingle plugins for RQC or the in-basket, that sort of thing. If we take a look at our PO20 screen, You'll notice that right next to the token number, it has the product line name. They did get rid of the traditional welcome message in Portal. The welcome message in the upper right is normally where you'd put your product line name. That's not there anymore. So as an alternative, we have the ability to show the product line name right after the token. So that makes it easy to know where you are when you're in a test environment. Over on the right side of the screen, I've got some, I got my print manager display up. That's coming out of Mingle, and I do think that's a nice improvement over Portal, the way that you can access print files so easily in Mingle right alongside your application screen. So I mentioned the top of the screen came out of Mingle, and the middle comes from Portal. The web user interface in Lawson 10, although it looks like one single unified web page to an end user, it's actually being driven by two really different pieces of the application. Common misconception is that Mingle is channeling all the traffic from Lawson, all the traffic from Portal. That's not the case. So when your browser is displaying a Lawson portal within Mingle, the portal portion of the page is being delivered directly by the Lawson web server. It's not being passed through or proxied through Mingle. So here on this slide, just wanted to illustrate that one single web page is actually, you have content being driven by two completely different systems, two completely different platforms. The wrapper around the page is coming from Mingle. That's all coming off of the Microsoft platform, backed by a SQL Server database. But the middle portion of my screen is Portal, and that's being, maybe I'm on a Unix environment, so that's being delivered by WebSphere, running on IBM AIX, and maybe powered by an Oracle database.
We got ourselves a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a good one. Probably, I think, a couple slides ago, but basically the question is Windows 2012 R2 now certified?
Yeah, it is. It is. 2012 R2 is supported for LSF with either version 10.07 or 9.01.14. Those versions came out about 2 weeks ago. 2012 R2 is supported for Landmark in the most recent release as well. I think across the board at this point with Infor applications, you'll find 2012 R2 support's available.
So we do have customers ongoing, right, in their upgrade process that are transitioning to 10.06. Is Windows 2012 R2 not supported for 10.0.6?
Not officially, no. The environment version, environment level 6, ESP6, does not officially support 2012 R2. We have, one of our clients is a early adopter on that platform. We've been working closely with Infor, and they did launch their project with 10.06 on 2012 R2, and we were able to get support from Infor for that project, but it's generally the general certification wasn't until 10.07.
Okay, and just to reiterate here, question on the same vein, do we know what release of Landmark again that supports 2012 R2?
Well, at this point, if you're looking to implement Landmark, there's really only one version that you want to install, and that's 10.1.1. The latest CU of 10.1.1 offers support for 2012 R2.
Okay.
I mean, check my work, please. I'm not the.
You don't represent Infor.
I don't represent Infor. You want to look at the install guides, the release notes, and if you have any questions, sometimes interpreting what they have in the release notes or the install guides isn't totally clear cut. Just open a case with Infor support and ask them for clarification. Because really, you don't want to end up in an environment where you've built out a configuration that Infor support is not going to support you with going through your upgrade project.
Okay. And as you go through this current slide, I got a question for you to keep in mind, which is, does the SharePoint server for Mingle need to be a dedicated server?
Okay.
Or can it be shared with another application? And I'll let you.
Yeah, so all right, we'll talk about that. What I have here is an architecture diagram from Mingle. This shows some of the various components that make up a Mingle application. Mingle, it only runs on Windows, right, because it's powered by SharePoint. So what I have here is a Windows box. And let me talk through what these various components are and the order that we install them. So we're going to go build out a new Mingle server. We start with Windows virtual machine, and we're going to start by installing SharePoint Foundation 2013 there. That's a free product from Microsoft. It's a free download from Microsoft's website. SharePoint Foundation 2013, we're going to install that in farm mode, and that means that it uses SQL Server as a repository, not SQL Express. Mingle doesn't come with a SQL Server license, so that's a client's responsibility to license, have a license available for an instance of SQL Server. You don't need to use a dedicated SQL Server for this. You can borrow another server you already have up. Once SharePoint Foundation 2013 is installed, and by the way, we found that the Microsoft's installer tries to automatically install all the prerequisites for SharePoint, and there are a lot of prerequisites. But we found that sometimes some of those prereqs can't be installed automatically. Just keep an eye out for that. You might need to dig through and find which prereqs might have failed install, and then just basically try and acquire and install those prerequisites one at a time. So once our SharePoint Foundation is up and running, the next thing we're going to do is install Mingle into that. So Mingle is an Infor application that's downloaded from Infor product downloads. And that basically lays on top of our SharePoint layer. Once we have Mingle up and running, the next thing we want to look at is authentication. Out of the box, SharePoint is set up to authenticate against what? Windows Active Directory. Right? It's going to, when you try and access the SharePoint site, it's going to prompt you for your Windows username and password. Although our Lawson environment may be AD bound, we don't really want Mingle to authenticate directly against Windows. We want Mingle to be bound for single sign-on with Lawson. Right? So we want to set up a security token service that points to our traditional Lawson login page to enable single sign-on. And that's what this component is on the lower left. LS is STS. We take the default security token service that comes with SharePoint, and we replace that with an Infor component that installs out of the DSP that offers Lawson security as a security token service. Now, that's not the only way to set up security in Mingle. There are a couple of other ways. There's an ADFS provider, so if you want to use Active Directory Federation services, you could do that. ADFS is the method that Mingle will use to authenticate if you do a cloud implementation of Lawson. So if you have Infor Lawson running in the cloud and you want to provide single sign-on back to your on-premise Active Directory, you're going to use ADFS. Finally, there is also a Kerberos authentication option. Kerberos is the most difficult to set up and the least widely deployed. The compelling reason to use Kerberos is if you want to provide single sign-on to a non-Lawson Infor product that authenticates with Kerberos. So not that common. Not recommended unless you do need to provide single sign-on with one of these other pieces of software. And really, this choice isn't set in stone. So you can move forward to LS's STS today, and if you do, at a later point, bring up a product that might require Kerberos for single sign-on, you can always change that out at a later point. I think that covered our bottom three squares here, right? We've got SharePoint, we've got Mingle, and now we've got our security token service. How do we make Mingle talk back to Lawson? That's where the plugins come in. So there are various plugins that could be installed into Mingle, and what those plugins do is they provide icons at the top of the Mingle screen for you to navigate into the various applications that make up your Lawson system. So you see I've got an S3 plugin, which is Portal. I've got an LBI plugin, which is our dashboards, MSCM, and a custom plugin, which allows you to bring in basically any Lawson web application and empower it with single sign-on and a nice cohesive user experience. So getting back to your question of do we want a dedicated server for this or not, I have a couple of best practices to offer. I would recommend hosting Mingle on its own virtual machine that's dedicated for that purpose. I would not recommend installing Mingle on the Lawson server. I wouldn't even really recommend co-locating Mingle with the Portal web server, only because the SharePoint tries to monopolize the IIS instance, so it can become challenging to configure IIS to support multiple sites. I guess if you're using IHS, it's not, you don't have that consideration. But in general, I'd say, what with virtualization, VMs are fairly easy to spin up, easier for performance tuning to put Mingle on its own box. And we don't necessarily recommend using an existing SharePoint instance that you might have in your organization. So if you have an intranet site powered by SharePoint, yeah, it's possible that you can integrate all of that in with Mingle. But there are a couple of downsides to that. One is authentication. So generally with Mingle, you want that single sign-on with Lawson. So if not everyone in your company is a Lawson user, you might not want to restrict your whole SharePoint instance so that only Lawson users can log in. The other thing is it introduces a lot of version dependencies, right? So right now the supported version for Mingle is SharePoint 2013. What if a new version of SharePoint comes out and you're looking at upgrading, but you're held back because your Mingle version only continues to support 2013, or any other components on the system that you need to tie out.
So I have a question on the previous slide.
Oh, okay.
Not that direction. So the question is, how do you create a custom plugin, or what would I use to create one?
Yeah. Okay. So the custom plugin capability needs to be installed on the Mingle server. So when you first install the plugins on the box, you check off which plugins you want to have available. So make sure that you have custom selected during that install. You can go ahead and add it later, but one thing to watch out for is when you run the plugin install, you have to select all the plugins you want every time you run the install. So if you run through the install and think, I just want to add custom and just select custom, that'll wipe out the other plugins that are on the box. So first, get the plugin installed. Once it's available to you, it's very easy to add an actual site as a custom plugin. It's all done through the Mingle web interface. So that's actually under site settings. If you go into the regular SharePoint, like it's up in the upper right. You go, if you're a SharePoint admin, you go in the upper right and you go into the site settings. You'll see that there's a new section on that page for Infor Mingle. And there's a menu option in there to add a new Mingle site. So you go in and say add a new Mingle site, and it'll ask you which plugin you want to use. You select the custom plugin, and then you basically type in whatever URL you want for this page. So you can type in your RQC URL or your in-basket URL or really whatever portion of the Lawson web interface you want to present there, and it's cool because it makes it so easy to navigate in because you got that icon and you can choose whatever icon you want. You can upload custom icons, and I think I have a slide on this later too, so I'm totally preempting myself. We'll get to that. send me an email later, and I can follow up with specific written instructions. Okay, so this Mingle is pretty exciting, so let's keep talking about it. Obviously, it's one of the big differences here. So we were talking about plugins. I mentioned that LBI is a plugin. That's different than how it works in Lawson 9, right? Because most people that are using dashboards in Lawson version 9, those dashboards appear within Portal. You know, you've got your Portal page, your bookmarks on the left, and right in the middle of the Portal page is where your dashboards display is. That's not how it works in Lawson 10. In Lawson 10, you don't look at dashboards in the middle of Portal. They exist as a separate Mingle plugin. So it's just a little bit different of how you navigate in. You do still have all the capability that are in dashboards today as far as navigating through the system and accessing resources that are in Portal continues to exist. So speaking of Portal, it hasn't completely gone away. From a systems component perspective, portal.jar still needs to be installed when you build your Lawson server. So on your LSF box, you're still going to deploy Portal in the WebSphere. You're still going to have a Portal web server component in your Lawson 10 environment.
What about add-ins? Does that work the same with Mingle?
Oh, yeah, great question. So yes and no. Add-ins continue to hit the Portal web server as their source of data. So where end users will go to the Mingle site and log into Mingle and type in the Mingle server name or Mingle address in their address bar to access Lawson. When you fire up the Excel query wizard, the Excel upload wizard, and it prompts you for an URL, you actually need to enter the URL of the Portal web server. So that might be a different server name than how you're generally accessing the Lawson environment. But yeah, the add-ins pretty much work the same way. So we talked about the Portal welcome message that that it doesn't really exist anymore. The workaround for that is showing the product line name after the token. Generally we see the differences in Mingle being mostly aesthetic and not so much functional. There's a way to do everything in Mingle that you could do in Portal. So what opportunities do we have to take advantage of Mingle, to customize Mingle, to have it your way? One thing we recommend is Mingle supports deep links, right? Like Portal has never really supported the ability to provide a link deep into a specific screen. You do have that ability in Mingle, and what we would recommend is to, if you're adding a link to your intranet site or just generally publishing a link to help users navigate in, find the link that'll take you to the Portal homepage screen, the thing that users are most familiar with, and make that the link you publish. Your default, when you first install Mingle, Mingle's homepage is really just going to be a SharePoint screen, and although it's super useful because you have all the functionality of SharePoint that you could take advantage of with lists and information, message boards, file libraries, everything like that, probably your users would find it more convenient just to be right in a Portal when they first access the site. Talked a lot about custom plugins so far. My favorite things to do with custom plugins are RQC and the in-basket for approvals. And one of the reasons I think those line up really well as custom plugins is because plugins can have security based on roles. So you can say, here's my custom plugin for RQC, and only show it if the user is in the RQ requester role. So that'll line up pretty well with my existing security. The same with an in-basket. I can say only show this in-basket link at the top of the screen if they're in in-basket user SC role for an actor role. What else? We've got some pretty good options to change the look and feel of the user interface with logos, colors, CSS, that sort of thing. All right, this is the big topic: external access to ESS, and how is this different? This solution has been evolving a bit over the past year. So what this means is for anyone out there who has ESS deployed and you have ESS available outside your firewall, right? So employees can log in from home and do a benefits enrollment or check their pay stubs or something like that. How is this traditionally done is you've got your Lawson environment and your internal web server. Generally, you would add a second web server in the DMZ and add a second endpoint and make that available through a firewall or a load balancer, reverse proxy, that sort of thing. So that way users can log in and they would generally see the same thing logging in from home that they see while they're in the office. A portal screen, and they'll use their portal bookmarks to navigate into ESS. The big catalyst for change here is with Mingle, the bookmarks work a little bit differently. The bookmarks capability is to, it's different in Portal version 10, and we don't necessarily recommend publishing a full Mingle instance outside the firewall. That's a much larger surface for potential vulnerabilities, what with the entire SharePoint infrastructure out there. So we say, how can we get just ESS available outside the firewall, but we still want to have some navigation that right now we're using Portal bookmarks for. One quick way that we found a lot of customers have solved that problem is by creating their own HTML page just to provide some links into ESS pages. Basically, creating their own simple menu structure to get into ESS and just publishing that static HTML page out instead of bringing in all of this infrastructure just to support a menu. I also want to mention that there's a fairly new capability out there available with ISS. So if you have Infor security services installed, and this works in 901 as well. This is not just a version 10 thing. ISS now allows you is now aware of multiple endpoints you might have on your system, and allows a user coming into the system to be shown a different portal role depending on which URL they used. So if they typed in the address for the internal web server, they might get one portal role. If they use the address for the external web server, we can show them a different portal role. What's that for is we can say, if you want to access the Lawson environment from home, we're going to restrict you to ESS only, and maybe we want to show portal but without the search box. We also have the ability to have some extra security that's applied based on that endpoint. So if you're coming in through the external endpoint, we can set up some additional security rules that would apply for you accessing the system solely through that endpoint. So that's just an extra security mechanism to make sure that anyone coming in from the outside wouldn't have access to tables that they wouldn't necessarily need for ESS. If you're interested in setting that stuff up, it's available in 901 as well. There's a chapter in the EMSS admin guide on that, so check out the EMSS admin guide. All right, moving on. Process flow to IPA, one of my favorite subjects. For anybody that somehow missed this morning's presentation, we'll just touch on this a little bit. Of course, we've all heard that with version 10, if you're using process flow, you must move to IPA. IPA is Infor's next generation workflow product. It's much improved over process flow. You're gonna want to be there. You're gonna like making the switch. The big question is when's the right time to do that, right? So do you want to take on a PFI to IPA migration project now while on Lawson 9, or do you want to look at rolling that into the overall Lawson 10 project? I don't think there's a right answer for everyone. I'd be happy to talk to anybody one-on-one if you want to just throw around some ideas. A lot of it comes down to what's your current use of process flow today? How many flows do you have? How much work do we think it's going to be to get you switched over? And who needs to participate in that project? And are those resources going to be available to work on that as well as a total platform upgrade at the same time? I mentioned earlier, at this point, if you are looking at implementing Landmark for the first time today, you need to be on Java 7 across the board. So your LSF server needs to be running on Java 7. You're going to want to do a WebSphere update to WebSphere 8.5. So that's not just on the Landmark server, Java 7 across the board. A couple of considerations when doing that project. Obviously, your flows and data needs to get migrated, and there are conversion utilities to do that, to move flow and approver data from process flow into IPA. The data that has been stored in Logan tables all along in IPA, that data lives in the IPA database. So it's a different database. Table schema is different, table names are different, column names are different. So that has an impact on any external reports you might have. Definitely emphasize training for not just for administrators, but mostly for flow developers to take advantage of all the new capabilities IPA has to offer. And be happy to talk cutover strategy if anyone's interested. The work unit cutover with process flow to IPA, it's not automatic. So work units you have in process and process flow don't necessarily move over to IPA at the moment that you make the switch. The two strategies available are either if you're doing your IPA project while on Lawson 9, bringing up IPA doesn't break process flow, so you can actually run parallel workflow systems, simultaneously for a while you run out work units in the old system. But if you're doing this project as part of your Lawson 10 upgrade, do look at on go live weekend, hopefully minimizing the number of items that are out there for approval. But for those items that are left out for approval, be sure to query those out of the system, because you're going to want to restart those work units over on IPA when you're live on Monday. All right, let's talk a little bit about ISS. Big part of the Lawson 10 environment. ISS is this is definitely Infor's go-forward solution for managing security and federation in the Lawson world. ISS is Infor Security Services. It's been out for about 2 years. What it really consists of is an application that runs on your LSF server. It runs in WebSphere. So this is a WebSphere application. It lives on the LSF server, and it provides the federation capability between LSF and Landmark. That's going to provide your single sign-on for web access to the web in-basket. It's also going to keep all of your security data synchronized. On the LSF side, LSF uses LDAP as a container to hold all security configuration users. On the Landmark side, Landmark also needs to store all that data, but it uses its own database, its Gen database, to store all that data in parallel. ISS is the thing that ties it all together. When you look at implementing ISS, this can be a large project, and if it's part of your 10 upgrade, it can be a significant piece of the 10 upgrade. I would say the one thing to look out for is the ISS sync. ISS sync it basically pulls all the data out of LDAP and tries to push it into or synchronize it with data in Landmark Gen, and that process is highly variable based on what you have out there in LDAP. So if you've been on Lawson for a few years, there might be some corruption or bad data in LDAP that really doesn't show any symptoms in Lawson, and it doesn't really come out till you try and do an ISS sync. Right at that point, you'll be forced to correct or clean that up before you can complete the process. My biggest advice that I could give is when you do this in test, make sure test is representative of prod. So if you have 5,000 users in prod, don't do an ISS sync with 150 users in test and assume all is going to go well. And try and get your test system to look as close to prod as possible. What order should we have till 1:15, right? All right, cool. We're totally on time. What order do we want to do these projects in? I would say security is one that we definitely recommend doing first. If anybody has any users still running on LAUA security classes, now's a great time to move to Lawson Security, because in the Lawson 9 platform, you can bring these on almost a user-by-user basis.
I do have a question on the process flow migration. Might as well try to get that one out.
Yeah.
I know you're moving on here, but it's a good question. It's basically, when upgrading process flow to IPA, will approvers have 2 in baskets until all in-flight work units are completed?
Yeah. So generally, yes. So that's not an automatic thing. That's a thing that you're going to control and configure. So if you wanted to run out work units in process flow whilst new work units are starting over in IPA, yeah, you would leave both in baskets available. You're going to access them with different portal bookmarks. It can be confusing, but the one saving factor is your email notifications will probably have the link in, right? So when an approver gets an email, just train them to click the link in the email, and the link will bring them to the right in basket. Yeah.
All right. Do you still set up users the same way with LSA and RMA?
As oh, like with ISS?
It just says LSA and RMA clients. So that's, I think that's the yeah. Okay.
Lawson Security Administrator, right?
So that's the question with ISS. Yeah, you're right.
Right. So ISS, one of the features that it offers is a web-based forms to create and maintain Lawson user accounts. So the guidance from Infor is once ISS is installed, start using ISS whenever you need to. Whenever you would go into Lawson Security Administrator to either create a new user, maybe change the roles assigned to a user, or disable a user, the guidance is use ISS for that. And I would recommend that too, because those screens are a lot more friendly, and it's web-based, so it's not something you need to install on your desktop. But the ISS capabilities pretty much end at user provisioning and maintenance. So what you can't do in ISS is create a new role or change a security class or add an RM group. So you still need to use the LSA and the RM tool for those types of tasks.
Yeah, I got a cool question.
Yeah.
Sorry, excuse me. It's so cool, it's making me choke.
Yeah.
So when you say ISS pulls everything from the LSF LDAP, does that mean that everyone in our Active Directory will have a profile built, or just the users that are built into the LSF user account?
Yeah. Okay, that's a good question. This is it's kind of confusing because there's a couple of LDAPs in play with Lawson. Remember that Lawson has its own LDAP instance that it uses as a repository for all Lawson users as well as other security data. That's usually hosted either in IBM Tivoli or in Microsoft Atom, right? And that's usually a separate instance of LDAP from any other directory server you might have on your network. So that's what's going to get synchronized over a landmark. Active Directory, like your Windows sign-on, really the interaction there is simply for password validation. So the ISS is not going to comb your whole AD and try and bring over all data from AD in the landmark. All right. Okay, let's keep this rolling here. One thing I want to point out is that Infor's release strategy has been solidifying over the past couple of years, and it's now fairly predictable. And along with that, Infor support has put down some guidelines around what software versions there are, various levels of support available for. Want to point out that environment patches are only being created for N-2 versions at this point. So that means that if the current version of your environment, if the current version out available for the environment is 10.07, and a new issue is identified requiring a patch, maybe for compatibility with third-party software or a bug that was discovered, that patch will be delivered for the current version, 10.07, and then N-2, that's 10.06 and 10.05. So if you're on, say, a 10.04 environment, you won't have the option to take advantage of that fix because Infor will say you need to get up into N-2 to get that fix. Now that applies only to the environment side because the environment needs to be recompiled for every single platform available, where the applications are delivered in source. So generally, if there's an applications patch, that can be patched back to source, and you can take advantage of that at generally any level. If we take a look at when these are coming out, environment level updates generally come out twice a year. And that's important because you want to look at your overall upgrade timeline and think about, when I'm going to start my Lawson 10 upgrade project, what specific versions of products am I going to install? I know a lot of people don't necessarily want to go with the latest and greatest. They want to go with something maybe one revision or two revisions down that's a little bit more proven. And then you want to look at what's my upgrade timeline look like? What version am I going to go live on? And by that point, what version will have Infor released? Because that'll help you plan out, after go live, how close am I going to be to falling out of that N-2 versioning, where you really want to be to take advantage of any new patches. Would also just mention here that so the security system in Lawson used to be delivered as part of the environment. That changed a couple of years ago, and the security components are now released separately. They have their own versioning levels. ISS has been coming out fast and furious, updates every month or two. ISS is patched by redelivery, meaning reinstall. That's different from LSF that has a patch installer. And keep in mind that ISS patches often have a dependency on both the LSF and the landmark side as far as either a patch or a minimum level you need to be at. All right. Okay, let's talk about upgrade approach here. There are generally two types of upgrade that you can do. You can do an in-place upgrade, which means apply an update to your existing system to bring it up to a new level. You can also do a parallel upgrade, which means build out a new environment on the side and then do a data migration and a cutover. The in-place upgrade option for version 10 is not very popular. In fact, I don't know a single customer that has taken on an in-place upgrade. And the reasons there are mostly around risk. The problem with the in-place upgrade is it doesn't give you a lot of opportunity to test out the newly upgraded system, right? You're applying the update to a system that has to be in a down state, and you're looking to get that completed as soon as possible. There's a lot of tasks that need to be completed as part of the upgrade, and in place simply may have too many tasks to be able to feasibly complete in a weekend downtime window. Parallel upgrade seems to be the way to go here with Lawson 10. For any customers that are on Windows, I'm definitely going to recommend going with a parallel upgrade. There are just so many components that need to be updated or changed. With a parallel upgrade, you're going to look at building out a new environment. You have the opportunity to test everything out as a standalone system. You can do a migration pass. You can do multiple migration passes to make sure you've got everything down. So let's take a look at some example upgrade approach diagrams here. This is different for every customer we've worked it with. There's no one universal approach that works for all. I mean, this has to do with the number of environments you have in 9, how many environments you want to maintain in 10. Some customers are more comfortable building out the test environments first, then moving to production. Some would rather build out their production environments first and then add tests later. Really, there's pros and cons of each approach. What I've got here is an example, what we call the 3-pass upgrade. This has been our most popular upgrade approach for all the projects we're doing. In this upgrade approach, we assume that you have 2 environments today. We begin by building out a future Lawson 10 test environment in parallel and populating it with data and configuration from production or a recent copy of production. Our first pass, we focus on making sure that we built out everything we need in the environment and that everything is running successfully. We generally want to do this fairly early on in the project because we want to give an area for application exploration, for people to get hands-on with the system. This also becomes your development environment when you look at changing any custom programs, mitigating any compatibility issues with interfaces and that sort of thing. Once our test environment is up and running and solid, that's where we look at adding our second environment. We take the lessons we learned with 10 test and use that to build a clean and solid Lawson 10 production environment. We also do another data migration, again, generally sourcing from production or a recent copy of production. This is what we call the second pass, and now we start to focus more on timing and a trial run for go live. Then that sets us up for our third pass, which is taking the system live. It's where our data again comes over. This time a cutover from prod. At the same time, this line represents our development customizations that have been deployed through our change control process from future 10 test to future 10 live.
I do have a question here, and it's a good one. It's the question itself is: once you federate during testing, is it then necessary to refederate at go live? And basically, even higher level, how do you handle the ISS sync as part of your rollout?
Yeah, that's a pretty good question. Right, because at some point you built out your 10 live environment and you brought over from security, but then you might have been conducting UAT testing in the environment. It might be 2 months between the time you originally built that environment and when you're looking to go live, and you need a true up with security and users. We do generally look at running a sync or at least ensuring that all users, both on the LSF and the Landmark side, match what we have are consistent with prod. Ideally, we would like to do that before go live. We would like to have a freeze out on Lawson security changes a week before go live, so we can take that time before go live to get everything in sync and not have to do that task over a downtime period.
Makes a lot of sense.
All right. coming up to the end here, just wanted to point out a couple of the components of what we call an upgrade pass. There are just so many pieces that need to be brought over when you do this 9 to 10 migration. The biggest one is the actual application update. That's where your product line database gets updated to the Lawson 10 schema. Infor has changed the way that that process works with version 10. So the upgrade programs from 9.01 to 10 do run much faster than they did from 9.00 to 9.01. You want to use, why they run faster is because Infor is basically able to issue direct SQL statements through JDBC to the database rather than working through the Lawson data access layer for every single row and every single table. But you do want to make sure that your JDBC config is set up correctly as part of the upgrade job to take advantage of that. Yeah.
2 minutes.
Got it. Maybe we can touch a little bit on platform migrations before we close it out. Has been, as I mentioned earlier, fairly popular this upgrade cycle, looking at maybe moving from Oracle to SQL Server, from AIX to Windows. A couple of considerations there. One is that wherever you see a user ID stored in Lawson, like an operator field, on the Unix side, that's a straightforward user ID. On the Windows side, you get what's known as an NT ID, which is basically a long string of numbers. So that's going to be a little bit different in the way the Lawson application works between two environments. There's a command called list user map that will sort of let you see that mapping between actual username and NTID. What else? Take a look at a big factor in upgrade with a platform migration is a database conversion. If you're looking at moving from Oracle to SQL Server, that's a big extra step that becomes part of every upgrade pass. There are a couple of different approaches to do that. Generally, on the Lawson side, you're going to use DB copy. You're going to attach your Oracle 901 product line and your SQL Server 901 product line to the same Lawson environment and use DB copy to move that data from one to the other. That's the way to use Lawson toolset to do the database conversion. The only downside there is the speed. If you can use your database tool sets to do that, you're just going to run a lot faster. So you can use something like SQL Server Migration Assistant to just do a direct database-to-database conversion to get you over on the right platform. And then from there, you still, of course, need to run the Lawson upgrade programs to get up to version 10. All right. Just do want to highlight testing. I think with this upgrade more than any in the past, there's a lot more on the plate to make sure you test. And my final slide is I just want to talk again about training. Really important. Less so for the functional side, the end users, the business users, but way more so on the technical side. Landmark as an application server is very complex, on par with LSF. There are differences in the way that the LSF 10 works versus 9. SharePoint is in the mix, although to be honest, there's not a day-to-day maintenance required with SharePoint. So once it's set up, you generally don't need to maintain it, and training isn't quite as important there. All right.
Okay, and we have a question here. Is it possible to implement, I never know if it's SQL or SQL encryption?
Oh, yeah, data at rest encryption. That's a great question. Yeah, I do believe that's supported. I haven't done it personally yet, but I do believe data at rest encryption is supported on newer versions. Not just in 10, though. I think in later versions of 9.01. But send me an email if you want after, and I can help with a bit of research there.
Great. And with that, it's time to wrap it up. I want to thank Mr. Richard Stout for a great presentation. And for all of you who attended here today, in 15 minutes, we have a presentation talking about Infor's cloud services. So if you find that interesting, please go to rpic.com/events and sign in. And we hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.